If it wasn't for Johnny Cash, I probably wouldn't have bothered to interview Bono. In fact, when the editor of an Irish magazine asked if I wanted a world exclusive about a new U2 album in early 1993, I joked, "Why me, Lord?" and was taken aback when told Bono, for some inexplicable reason, wants you to do the interview. This was surreal. After all, to that same editor, I'd once joked, deadly seriously, as we Irish are prone to do, geez, your magazine may as well be the U2 newsletter. But also, I hated the way Bono was practically deified by many of my peers in the Irish media, and frankly, I doubted the authenticity of his alleged Christian base. It seemed to me to be, if you took for even a moment a traditional tilt on Christianity, which certainly wasn't my pan-denominational worldview, at odds with their celebration of the erotic on the album Addicting Baby, and rumours of hedonistic excess during their most recent tour. On the other hand, I loved Addicting Baby. I rated it as the first truly brilliant U2 album. I loved the sense of cultural confidence the band had brought to Ireland, and the fact that they made this country a global force for the first time in the history of rock and roll. So I was torn. I also had recently in the Irish Times criticised U2, so I knew this could be their attempt to woo a media dissident, to win me over with an offer of a world exclusive and all that stuff. But I'd also recently interviewed two of Bono's heroes, Sam Phillips, founder of Sun Records, and Johnny Cash, and I felt this might be part of the reason he wanted to be interviewed by me. Not only that, in my article about Johnny, which we did in advance of his upcoming Irish tour, I mentioned that I'd told him U2 were recording an album in Dublin, and I suggested yet again, as I had the first time I interviewed Johnny 3 years earlier in Glasgow, that he and they should record together. Now it seems that as soon as Bono heard Cash was coming to Dublin, he wrote for him a song. But the first I heard of any of that was in February 1993 when I was backstage at Johnny's gig in Dublin's Olympia Theatre. He said, "Joe, you should be happy I recorded a song with you too, though I don't know if it will be on their new album or even what it's called." His manager remembered, I think Bono said it's called The Wanderer. I said, either way, I hope it is on the album, knowing this could help revive Cash's career. It was, and it did. But all that was in the future when I was asked if I wanted to interview Bono, and I seemed to hear, crazy as this may seem to some, Johnny Cash say, "Oh, go for it, Joe." So I did. But I didn't realise until I went back to the tapes for this show that even though Bono did tell me when I arrived at the recording studio in Dublin where U2 were working on the album, which would subsequently turn out to be Zooropa, that he was in an improvisatory mode. And he said, maybe we should do this like a Miles Davis improvisation. But he didn't, as I have previously claimed, ask me to set aside my prepared questions. But I did improvise the 2.5-hour interview, and we talked about that afterwards. It took place in a hospitality room with a hi-fi system, and it began when Bono played for me and sang along with a cassette tape mix of the album's title track, Zooropa. Bono there shouting at me like some perpetually questioning post-apocalyptic evangelical preacher. Well, he was or not, I'd yet to decide. Lines such as, "I have no religion, and I don't know what's what, and I don't know the limit of what we've got." I liked it. He then played for me most of the tracks from the album, and also at one point turned on his Apple PowerBook, clicked open a lyrics file, and read for me a poem which he was planning to read on tour, set against the backdrop of a still from Leni Riefenstahl's movie Triumph of the Will.
It was a piece written called In Cold Blood, which I haven't, to be honest, rewritten or anything.
Right.
I read a book once called In Cold Blood about a murder in the neighbourhood. Pages of facts did me no good. I read it like a blind man in cold blood. On cable television I saw a woman weep, lie by satellite from a flooded street, boy mistaken for a waste paper bin, a body that a child used to live in. Saw plastic explosives and an alarm clock, and the wrong men accused sitting in the dock. Karma is a word I never understood, how God could take a 4-year-old in cold blood. I live by a beach but it feels like New York. I hear about 10 murders before I get to work. What's it going to be, Lord, fire or flood, an act of mercy or in cold blood? Right. And it's just in the middle of the kitsch. Sometimes you have to stick the boot in, and right. You know, but it's about overload. Right. Most of what we're doing now.
You're going to recite that over?
Yeah, it's just kind of talked. Or I'll take samples of it, lines that I like.
Okay.
And like a line here, right there, and because it's not about the cold blood of the act. It's about the cold blood of of the way we respond
Right.
to the act.
Right. If you did just that though, to strip down the drum sample, I mean, would that not be equally powerful?
I think it might.
You know what I mean? With nothing else, so all that gets across, I think. Because
Yeah.
they're very powerful verbal images.
Yeah, I think I could just read it.
Yeah.
And I thought, and on stage, if I'm reading it, I'll be reading it standing in front of a 12 foot by 12 foot television image
Right.
of the child playing that drum
Right.
in 1936 in the Olympic Stadium in Berlin.
Yeah. That's almost all you need, though, isn't it?
It's like that.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me more then. What else is on the album?
Let's see, here's another.
I met Johnny Cash the night he did the thing. Which is that on or not?
Yes, it is.
The Wanderer or something. It's called, is it?
Yeah, it might be called Johnny Cash on the Moon, really. Cash thing is the sort of antidote to the Zooropa manifesto of uncertainty. The sort of I don't know compass, don't have map, don't know, don't know. But I like none. I like it. You know, this uncertainty. I think the line is something. Uncertainty will be a guide. I think that's.
This is in the Cash.
No, in the Zooropa.
Oh, right, yeah.
This is the antidote of it. Actually, what I'd like to call it would be call it the preacher, because he has a tradition of songs, the singer and that.
Yeah.
But maybe it should be called Johnny Cash on the Moon. You tell me.
I think it should be the Wanderer.
You think it should
I
go?
do, yeah. The reason I like it being the Wanderer is because remember I talked to Sam recently about cock rock dominating. Everybody's saying rock and roll is just sex, but because Dion's the Wanderer is so much kind of macho cock rock, you're taking what the Wanderer is in rock mythology and turning it into something else, which is what rock also is too.
That's what I wanted.
You know
to
what I mean?
Was the Wanderer. I didn't want to, vibe out Dion.
I think you should use the title. I honestly think because it does.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
No.
And it's kind of. It's very true to what Johnny Cash is. He must have felt at home singing that.
He did.
And so, that song was called The Wanderer, and its inclusion as the closing track on Zooropa did, as I say, help kickstart Johnny Cash's comeback that then led to his American recordings, which to me are the most rich and resonant of the man's career. Incidentally, within days of this article being published, I bumped into Johnny again in Branson, Missouri. He gave me an autographed copy of the Essential Johnny Cash 1955 to 1983 box set of CDs and said, "Thanks for helping me hook up with you two." Then he added, "I read your Bono interview. Great stuff. You certainly got him talking about religion in a way that I never heard him do before in public. But by the way, when I read he'd said he'd taken the band singing Wah Wah Wandering off the track, I sent him a fax saying, put it back in." And he did. And another thing, Joe, you were right to go with the title, The Wanderer. I then told Johnny Cash I did so not only because it seemed so right for him as a man on a spiritual search, but because it also had, on first hearing, become an anthem of mine. I didn't tell Bono that. So let's get back to the interview and Bono talking about the difference between writing songs for the likes of Cash or B.B. King and writing or improvising them for you too.
I'm sort of chronically lazy.
Okay.
And the only way I can do things is by saying I'll do them first, and then saying them in front of people, so that I have to do them, or else I won't do them. And so I remember with B.B. King on Love to Town, I just had this verse and chorus, and I said I had a song for B.B. And then he arrived for the song, and it was written in a half an hour. Now some people would say it sounds like that, but there's some good stuff in there, and sometimes it works well like that.
Right.
And
the Orbison song had that good singing Genesis being written when he arrived.
It was written the morning he arrived, but not completed. And actually, to complete it, it took a bit more.
Okay. But that's very linear. That's a very linear song. I mean, like it's a narrative song, and that's not like the other impressionistic action painting.
Yeah.
That's the other side of it.
Yeah. Well, I've never. It's the voice you're given.
Right.
It's all about the voice. See, Lou Reed or Bob Dylan, they get consonants to play with.
Right.
And my voice is about vowel sounds, and there aren't a lot of great words in there, and they get. I'm always envious of the words, that kind of voice gets to play with.
Right. Right.
And in order to get to that place myself, distorted my voice or gone to different lower octaves, like the fly or whatever.
Right.
But if I sing in my own natural voice, I especially in with the music of U2, I have to use very open sounding language, and so it's actually much more difficult to write a U2 song than it is sometimes to write a song for somebody else. And like Johnny Cash has got this great voice, and it loves certain words, and so I just wrote them. And
well, I'd seen somebody describe your singing before this album as stentorian bellowing.
Wow.
Did you see that review? It was in Wire, and they just said that you seem to be doing things with your voices that you really came to maturity as a singer. An Uptown Baby, and the way you were mixing it, whatever way it was being done.
Well, I never thought about it that much up until this album. You know, I hadn't. I suppose it started on the Joshua Tree. I started thinking about songwriting. Then if you start thinking about songwriting, you start thinking about singing. We never asked in the band, like, what key would suit your voice, and that was it. It was we improvised, and I put my voice on it, so I'd end up sometimes singing too high or too low.
Right.
But so if you start thinking about things like that, you get into singing, and you discover. And I went to see an opera singer called Tina Verbicka, and she said, you have a 3-octave range, and you shouldn't by rights be able to sing these notes that you're singing.
All right.
And I better teach you how to. You need to discover how to keep a hold of those notes, or you'll lose them. And after her good work, I managed to get through the whole of the last tour without any problems, and I've been dogged with those kind of problems over the years.
Right.
But writing for other people is a great way of escaping yourself.
But is that why you created the flying, though? I mean, it reminds me of McCartney saying about Sgt. Pepper that they had to create 4 new characters for the Beatles, so they didn't have to be each other, or they didn't have to live up to the image the public had of the Beatles.
Yeah.
So you create an alter ego. I mean, is that part of what you're doing on the next album? To sing, say whatever you wanted to, pose.
Yeah, but they're still bits and pieces of yourself.
Right.
They are your own. They've just got a better dress sense. These
same
demons.
Core. Same core.
But it's the same core, and I think it was partly a reaction to being cartooned, and discovering that you are being reduced, that you are being slowly reduced, and sort of creating a sort of anti-cartoon.
Right.
It would take a great cartoon to balance it out. As a sort of. But there are many. It's not just one or two. There are. I think that's it's an important thing to be able to be all the people you are, to be allowed to be all the people you are, and that we don't turn people into any one thing or another. Good guys or bad guys, people who have who are philanthropists or have heroic ideas, and then the others. Everybody is mixed up in that way. The same person who's capable of higher ideas is also capable of very base actions.
Right.
And we should, I think we're always surprised when we discover that people who we thought were, above us were, had their head in the mud just like everyone else. An artist has to, in some ways, expose himself. That's why I remember when Goldman wrote the book about John Lennon, after the book he wrote about Elvis. The difference was that we didn't really care that much about his. Take that back. We weren't surprised when we read about John Lennon, because he had told us already.
Sure. Yeah.
And so it's a device.
Right.
It's a device where you get to blow out every side of yourself,
Okay.
from the most highfalutin side of yourself to the most base. That's what rock and roll can be. You know, that kind of
from the God
that
to
kind
the
of a
devil.
playpen. Yeah.
From that full range.
Yeah, exactly. Just all the way, flesh and spirit, and it's humanness, and it's your humanity that is stripped away from you sometimes when you're in in public.
Right.
And in fact, somebody said to me a while ago, how does your ego stand being in a band? I mean, how does it survive being a rock and roll star? And I thought it was one of the smartest things anyone had ever spotted about rock and roll, because people think it's the opposite. People think it pumps up your ego, but in fact, I think it explodes it.
Right.
And so,
like as in fragments it.
Explodes
and you have to
it.
pull it back together.
Explodes it, blows it out, and I think that's why a lot of people who do what I do are so fucked up.
Yeah.
Anyone who needs 50,000 people a night to tell them they're okay has a bit missing, and I don't think you start out that way, and but I think that's a place you can get to very easily.
Right. But you get addicted on it, because I mean that's what Philip said to me about Presley, was that he had no self-confidence at all when he first walked into song. Elvis Presley.
Who told you this? Sam
Phillips.
Yeah.
And that then he needed the music, and finally ended up hooked to the audience, telling him every night he was it.
Yeah.
You know.
That's it. And
but how do you, if all that's stripped away from you, where do you stand?
well, I'm not complaining about it. I'm just. There's very little written about it. There's very little written about the psychology
Right.
of performing.
Right.
And I'm just conscious. I'm becoming more conscious of it.
Right.
And what happened is, coming down off a tour, there is this, there is a kind of, DTs involved, but it's not alcohol.
Right.
And there is no name for the substance. And I suppose what this record was about that we're making was, rather than try to, it was like, rather than come down to earth, stay on the moon,
Right,
and make a record there.
Right.
And
tap into the energy force.
just tap into it, like surf on it. That's all the image I like to use.
It's a substitute hit between tours.
That's the way I suppose it is.
Like keeping you up there.
Yeah, and you talk to actors, they say the same thing, that their personal lives are often a mess because they create the drama
Right.
that they've been legitimately involved in.
Right.
To fill the vacuum when it's finished.
Right. Some of them also disappear in between roles.
What do you mean by disappear?
Well, the world they live in is so tedious and boring to them.
Yes.
That they collapse, they fall apart, and that's very hard for a lot to deal with.
Yeah. Well, I'm just.
I know you're not.
I don't feel like that,
Right,
and I've got a lot of people around me who I'm always happy to come home, but I'm also conscious there's a part of me that doesn't come home.
Yeah.
And
but are you addicted then to that? You couldn't
I don't
give it
know.
up, could you?
I don't know, and
Like, there's not much to compare it. If you gave it up to go into painting or movie making or writing books, you're not going to get the same kind of feedback, that kind of kick, are you?
I mean,
at that epic scale.
I'd like to do all those things, but it does seem that there is a feeling when you are in the sort of in a crossroads of media, where there's a lot of lines crossing. That there is it's good work if you can get it.
yeah. And it depends on what it does to you, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Of course, talking about the spirit of rock and roll inevitably brings us back to its dual bass in gospel and rhythm and blues, as Elvis once said. So at this point, I told Bono I'd recently interviewed an Australian Christian group called the Newsboys, who suggested to me that U2 had lost touch with the spirit. And they said they felt excluded by U2's last album, Achtung Baby, and their recent tour. I then suggested that maybe Christian fans, such as that band, were expecting Bono to merely present God as an or the answer, whereas more recently he seemed interested in presenting a new set of theological questions.
Well, I deliberately kept the kept that record to for the most erotic love, and those so as is to almost exhaust it as a possibility, and I think that makes it a kind of prayer in a funny way.
Okay.
And
prayer to what?
And I think that, like, Love Is Blindness as the last song, I think Edge's guitar solo is more eloquent. It's more of a prayer than anything I could write.
But if you still have a core Christian belief, is that not the unifying factor that postmodernism kind of didn't have? We're supposed to now live in a world where the concept of God has been atomized, where there's no unifying center to it all. So we can only look at things that way. But you still have that faith, don't you?
No, you see, it's in fact the state of flux that dominates right now is a very good place to be. The status quo is the enemy of God, or the enemy of a spiritual life, as it is the enemy of a cultural life, as it is the enemy of a political life. Stasis is the enemy, and I have a sense. I have a faith, but I'm not attempting to clearly define it.
All right.
At this point, and I'm wide open, and.
But you previously had defined it within certain terms.
Well, you go through different phases in your attempts to work out what it is you believe.
Right.
There was a period back in the early 80s where we lived much more ascetic lives, and we got a great grounding in the fundamentals of what Christianity could be.
Right.
And it wasn't the kind of Christianity that I loosely, grew up around. It wasn't particularly Catholic or Protestant. It was the essential, what was going on. It was the sort of cutting edge of Christianity. It was, and I'm really glad of that.
Right.
And at the time, it was, you're very extreme in that honeymoon period. You're always extreme when you're defensive, and so I suppose we did kind of build a wall up around us and just kind of get on with it.
Right.
And the question of faith, I remember McGuinness saying to me back then, even, he said, look, I'm not sure I share all your I'm not sure I share your faith, but I know one thing. I know it's the most important question, right. and that an artist or a writer is going to have to address it, and if you want to do so, you'll get a lot of stick for it.
Mm-hmm.
But go for it.
Right.
And we did so, and I think people just look. It's like everything. It's very like the way people, I think, look at sexuality. They look at religion in the same way. That's why I say on the record, I have no religion, and they wanted to have,
like in an ordered fashion.
But they wanted to have kind of. They wanted to be dressed like religion. They wanted to be dressed like. It's like. I find all that paraphernalia very funny. It's just not me.
But only a person who has a core faith can laugh at those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have to have the base you're standing on.
But I have.
Right.
And
to see the humour, to see the lies, to see the myths.
But I also see that there's a line somewhere. I think it is the New Testament, which says that the Spirit moves. And no one knows where it comes from or where it's going. It's like a wind. And I've always felt that. And I've always felt that religion was, in many ways, the enemy of God. Because it denies the spontaneity of the Spirit. And because the almost anarchistic nature of the Spirit. And if you attempt to follow that Spirit, you will be taken down some roads you are going to be very, they're unexpected places.
Right.
And you're going to end up in. And it's not going to be like somebody writes it down in a catechism or whatever. I mean, I appreciate, people can have a handbook if they want on how to live.
Yeah.
But in fact, when pushed, when asked for his greatest hits, Christ will look, okay, I'm in a corner, but, love God, love your neighbour, love yourself.
Right.
And the sort of vicissitudes never seem to really be important. I think to me, they should come out rather than be put on. Come out of your
states of your expression, your forms of expression.
You're just your way. They should, you can't. Any attempt, to lead a religious life or to dress up for God is a big mistake. I mean, I've talked about the Psalms before. To me, as being a kind of I'm starting not to be able to speak, but a predecessor of the blues.
Right.
And because there you had a very honest dialogue with God, shouting at God, David, this character who was, a real fuck up, and wailing at God, where are you when I need you? I'm surrounded, my enemies are all around me. Call yourself God? What the fuck? Right. That's right. The tone.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I come in.
But do you wail out, where are you during the Gulf War, when you look over to Bosnia? I mean, surely, can you be that certain?
Well, I'm sure of one thing. I think it's Zooropa that says, and there's nothing certain, that's for certain.
Right.
But if I was certain of anything, I'm certain that this is not, that you can't pin our actions, the actions of man, on God. And I think that is our final arrogance. And
what, like a cop out, like a.
That we blame God for our own state, and because most people think we got kicked out of the Garden of Eden. I'm not so sure. I think we kind of kicked God out of it. There is enough food. We just won't share it out. There is enough to look after. Even, I just don't believe this world. It belongs to another force. It does not belong. We always see this as belonging somehow, that our planet belongs to God. I think it belongs to us.
Right.
And we may have stolen it from God, and you can try and give bits back, and to the extent that you do, maybe God can intervene. I don't know.
Like running back from the Cash song right back to the first lyrics you wrote, there is the kind of religious imagery and the religious faith.
Yeah, I also love the language of the blues, the poetic spirit of the blues, and its connection with the Bible, and all the language is all the Bible, and I just love the language of it.
So anyway, that original core faith, where did it stem from? I mean, I've seen it suggested that after your mother died, you turned very deeply to solace from religion. Is that too?
I think that's
too linear.
I think that's too sort of fairy tale-ish.
Is it?
I don't think it's that simple.
Like cause and effect.
Yeah, I don't think it's that simple. And one thing that I'm learning is that words, you talked about words earlier, that words can reduce as easily as images.
Right.
And so it's very hard to use words to talk about these things, and that's why I'm a musician.
Okay.
I think
things like the death to your mother and the feelings, the network of
just
feelings
just
yourself.
all those things, and it's almost glib, to try and explain these things away.
Right. But has not been a core of the impulse to create?
To explain.
Not to explain, to express, maybe more than explain. I mean,
I think that's what I was going to say. I think it's to express but not explain.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm, more and more. That's where I'm at. Is don't explain, express.
Okay. Well, but how come so much of it is rooted in rage?
Well, you see, love and anger are closely related. I mean, somebody said that hate is not the opposite to love. It's apathy.
Yeah.
And that's why people don't understand why some of the love songs are so savage, for instance. Yeah. And I said, but that's evidence of the well of emotion, more than some paean to love. He's just taking the back door to saying the same thing.
But hasn't rage been a central force for you in terms of, like it said that Edge's guitar can define the sound, but I also hear a lot of your rage and the group's rage defining the music.
Yeah, I mean, it's
like what these energies I heard you even tapping into on that new stuff you played to me today. A lot of subterranean kind of anguish, anger, passion, pain.
Yeah, I think rock and roll is some kind of revenge. I'm aware of that, and there is. I mean, I recognise there is some kind of violence in me, and I don't know if that is a reaction to growing up in and around it, or just being conscious of it, but. I mean, I like anything I like. I give it. I put a suit on it and send it out to work for me.
You get paid for doing it too.
I just work it out. It's just.
But it doesn't.
And I give it a focus.
But it doesn't seem to have dissipated. I mean, you did grow up and around it when you were 16, 18, 14, whatever it was, you're not that age any longer, yet the drive seems not to have diminished at all.
I don't know. I mean, hell, I'm a peace-loving guy
Oh,
now.
get out of it.
I don't know. I mean, I mean, that is a question that I'm actually, I would be interested in an answer to myself.
Right.
And and so would a lot of people who work for me.
Right. Yeah. But there are those who would suggest you need to hold on to that fire to create any kind of worthwhile art.
I don't know. I'd rather.
No, well, no,
I'd rather.
Would you?
I don't know. It's like people say, are you exorcising or are you exorcising the demons?
Yeah. And what do you feel?
I hope I'm exorcising. That's what I'm banking on.
I mean, demons can be in a limitless kind of amount.
The word demon is probably not a good choice, but you know what I mean. Yeah.
Well, your darkness, stepping into your own darkness.
You see, that has to be part of it. It's like Van Morrison said to me, something about more light, less darkness.
Right.
And I always just said to him, in our defence, that he used darkness to show up the light.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is why I have with my problem with the religious men of the day, is that they refuse to they refuse to stare. They're not looking at the world they live in, and they refuse to describe it in anything other than the blandest way. They're not attempting to understand it and to get it into it, and I think that it's like everything. It's like tells us who we are and what we are. On the Zoo TV tour, we use we use pornography. We'll draw on anything. What's ever in the air, we will pull it down. U.S. election campaigns was there, commercials, preachers on televangelists,
right.
Pornography, whatever is coming into the air, and that's our way of describing the world that we live in.
I then hit Bono with a left-of-field question that gave him a good belly laugh. I grew up near Bono's current home place, Killiney, and it has a hill upon which, when I was a child, we heard about satanic rites taking place. I'd also heard a wild rumour that Bono, as part of his exploration of darker forces, had explored Satanism. So, no problem, I asked him, had he?
Believe me, I heard that said about you.
That's.
Did you hear that?
I've heard some good ones.
Music.
Come
Come on, tell me.
Can I say yes? Because I would really
love it.
Can I say? Don't look. You know what I mean? What's one lie? It would be so. That would
Can
be.
you imagine? Oh wow! Right. No, but what about it? I mean, is there that kind of attraction to the darkness? How far will you go?
You're attracted. Maybe people say you're attracted to the things you're afraid of, don't they?
Yeah.
And
particularly if you were raised as a Catholic Christian in a country that tells you to deny the other side of yourself.
Yes, I never had that shit. I mean, I just.
What, take from it what you want? And
I was just given, a few clues and a few directives, and I wasn't spiritually abused.
Right.
And, just in the way that you can be mentally abused and physically abused as a child, I think you can be spiritually abused. And a lot of people have, enough religion to inoculate them against it, I think.
Right.
And they're left, and they've no expression for this side of themselves, because they could never look to there, because it's so oppressive.
Right.
I feel, and I really feel bad about that, because it's something that I may not have worked it out, but it does provide a lot of light for me.
Right.
And I feel sorry for, it's like I go to if I go to Central America, I'm in Nicaragua, those people, they've a very different kind of Catholicism. And it's like I became very interested in carnival, and I went to a lot of carnivals. And carnival, what is the celebration of the flesh, carne. That's
Right.
what it's about before
Right.
Lent. They're celebrating it.
Right.
And there are sexy people, you know, the Latin American people, and they have what the blacks have in the US, which is this ability to bring God with them wherever they go. You know, they don't. It isn't sort of. They don't compartmentalize their life. That's sex. That's way over there.
Right.
That's religion. That's way over there. This is my political life. This is. You know, it's all the lines are blurred, and they live. They access these sides of themselves in a much more fluid way
Right.
than Anglo-Saxon or this kind of Northern European Catholicism.
So what are you now to Satanism?
Why do I have to say no? This could be the missing scene from Spinal Tap.
Couldn't it? Jesus.
Could I just not just say, yeah, man, yeah. It's like that song. Who wrote that song? Chris Blackwell is a vampire. You know, have you heard that?
No, I haven't heard it.
Some Jamaican dub record.
Right.
I'm starting to see things in more mythic ways, though, and I'm starting to think that people do deals with the devil. And
Well, isn't that the root of the blues? That's Robert Johnson. That's Peter Green. But that's not been a temptation for you, has it?
I have too much respect for the devil
if you
to fuck with him.
No, but you're tentative talking about that, are you? Obviously,
What's that?
tentative talking about that, exploring.
I know it's very real about for a lot of people, and I know that it's going on, and I think in the vacuum, that the sort of the church has left. There's people are being sucked into an expressions of other kinds, and I think it's all very dodgy. I just see. I have a lot of respect for people who don't believe, and in fact, in particular, people who aggressively don't believe. And you know, because I think that itself is some kind of act of faith. They're believing that there is no God, therefore. Yes, I really do. I'm not.
Right. So
I probably have more in sympathy with a person like that than I would with the kind of I don't know. And I always believe that the most interesting music to me is made by people running toward or away from God.
Not running away from the devil, the hellhound on their trail kind of thing too.
It's part of the same
thing.
It's part of the same.
When you do 5 very dark songs in a succession on the stage, do you ever get scared of what you go into? Do you ever have to encounter things that you didn't want to draw up?
Yes, I do, and you get bullied by the songs sometimes. And there was a song on the Joshua Tree called "Exit."
Yeah.
And you know, I just wanted to take a bath after that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to wash it off me. And I broke my shoulder during it. It unearthed very. It brought up a lot of shit in me, and to the point where I've still hurt, and you know, and it was a song that somebody used in a murder.
Yeah.
And you remember that? I think it was.
I didn't know that. Like the Helter Skelter scenario.
It was used some guy brought it up, said the song made him do it. You know, that kind of scenario.
Yeah.
And.
But do you feel responsible for that?
No, not at all. I mean, that's somebody just finding it. That's a good lawyer there at work.
Right.
But I still feel that you have to as well as you have to go down those streets if that's where the subject is taking you. So you know, certainly in the imagination, I'm not sure if I want to get down there, you know,
to live.
To live. I'll take a walk, you know, You know, I'll have a drink with the devil, but not moving in. You know?
Yeah. But this has become the dominant colour of the work, hasn't it? I mean, even from what I'm hearing today, you're still exploring shadows.
Yeah.
I mean, despite the lightweight title on the last album and that,
Sure.
we're looking into the heart of darkness. Conrad will be very happy with what we're doing here.
Well, there was a section on the Joshua Tree set which we call The Heart of Darkness.
Yeah.
Which is that there was a section, Bullet the Blue Sky, into that other song, Running Standstill, then Exit.
Right.
But you know, this thing about the devil, just for a second.
Okay.
I don't see the kind of darkness that most people associate with the devil in those supposed dens of iniquity or illegal drinking houses, or
Okay.
I think you see it more. You can see it more in corporate life. That's what I meant by having a drink with the devil. You know, I think that they're probably guys in suits. It's you know, that they're people who have given up their soul,
Right.
to succeed in what they do, because there's a great power that somebody has that makes a person very, very powerful. It makes them a very interesting character too.
Right.
And you know,
So
I'm
you
sure
see
there was. I'm sure I saw somebody in the record company who looked just like that.
So what are you saying? The devil is where the spirit has been negated, where the spirit is dead. All elements of the spirit.
I'm just saying, don't look for it in all the obvious places.
Right.
Isn't that, you know? It's like, yeah. I'm just that's all. I don't think that, you know, the territory necessarily that I would be exploring is maybe not as dark as if I was on Wall Street.
Bono later told me he had intended merely to play for me the new album, have a brief chat, then split back into the studio where the rest of U2 were working that day on a final mix of the song Zooropa. But our Miles Davis improvisation lasted 2.5 hours, I say, and twice people tried to get Bono back into the studio. At one point, Larry Mullen Jr. interrupted us. As with Bono, I'd never met him before, and as we shook hands, I remember Boy George joking to me, if you see Bono and he still hasn't found what he's looking for, tell him to look behind the drum kit. Later, a female assistant came in and made it clear to Bono that the rest of U2 were anxiously awaiting his return. He said this to me.
I want to play one more song.
Okay.
Or do you want to ask me? Yeah.
You're not going to believe this.
What's that?
I didn't do the interview I came along to do. This is the first time in my life I've ever improvised an interview.
Oh yeah?
I've never done this before.
So what interview were you looking to do?
No, I had a set of questions like I usually have, but I just went with the way we were connecting. But I just want to tell you that I've never done it in my life. I tend to structure an interview like a one-act play. So there'll be critical questions, tensions, jokes, whatever, to keep readers hooked. So if you read the interviews that way, I usually try and get it. It doesn't always work, but that's always been my aim.
So your aim is quite structured.
Oh, yeah,
your background is.
Yeah.
That's interesting, and yet you're hip to lyric writing and understanding the blur.
Absolutely.
That's great. Because a lot of people from your background don't. They completely miss rock and roll. They don't understand.